The moment that changed Kevin's perspective, a 27-year-old marketing analyst, was when he realized that the single property tax payment of $3,400 was larger than the entire net balance left from his Christmas bonus. He looked at the app notification and felt cold sweat running down his back. His hand trembled a bit. This isn't just a story about Kevin. This could be about you, starting 2026 already in a financial trench, completely surrounded by bills. I've been in that place, in a phase of my life where year-end was the promise of a new beginning, but in reality, it was just the certainty of a new stranglehold. And between you and me, there's nothing more suffocating than the year-end turn, where the joy of the holidays transforms into the agony of mandatory bills. It's not just vehicle registration, property tax, and school supplies. It's the accumulation of commitments you pretended didn't exist for the last 9 months. And that's why, if you apply this attack tactic to your cash flow, in the next 40 days, you have the potential to transform January's pressure into ammunition for the rest of the year, preventing mandatory costs from digging a structural hole in your budget. Most people think January's mistake is just overspending at Christmas. December's rampant consumption is the villain. No, man, that's fish vision. It's the shallow view the system wants you to have. The fatal mistake that destroys your flow, that suffocates you right in the first month, is a structural error. It has to do with 2 blind spots I need you to see now, before it's too late. The first blind spot is this: you make capital circulation projections based only on 12 months. You plan for water, electricity, rent, health insurance, those that come every month religiously.
It has to do with 2 blind spots I need you to see now before it's too late. The first blind spot is this: you make capital circulation projections based only on 12 months. You plan for water, electricity, rent, health insurance, those that come every month religiously. But tell me, does vehicle registration come every month? Does car insurance come every month? Does your kid's college enrollment come every month? No. So you look at your January month and only see January's expense. It's absurd myopia that makes you forget that January actually concentrates something like 16 months of expenses in just 4 weeks. The second blind spot is even more treacherous. You confuse single cost with diluted annual cost. This is the most damned trap that lack of planning sets for you. You look at property tax of, say, $3,700. You see a single cost, but your brain completely ignores that to have those $3,700 ready in January, you should have saved, in a diluted and constant way, $308 per month in the previous year. You think, it's just January. But the problem is that your January salary was already fully committed to shopping, gifts, and December's leftovers. You were already in deficit before the year even started. Ray Dalio reminds us that pain is fundamental to progress. Pain shouldn't be avoided, it should be faced. January's pain shouldn't be forgotten in February. You need to perform an autopsy on this flow management error so you don't repeat it. Looking in the mirror and recognizing the failure is the first step to becoming a titan. I know January's pain is universal, and between you and me, the climate has been heavy lately, which only increases pressure on resources. Tell me in the comments, what was the mandatory cost that most caught you by surprise in the last 12 months? If you agree the mistake is structural and
Kevin's case is emblematic. He's 27 years old, an analyst making on average $3,800. He'd been dragging an old debt balance from financing he took out in a phase of life when he didn't know what APR, annual percentage rate of a transaction, was. Then he received the first and second installment of his Christmas bonus and felt that relief in his chest, that false sensation of having financial resources. His car, an older model, had a serious engine problem right at the end of November, and the repair cost a hefty amount, around $5,300. What was Kevin's specific mistake?
He used the entirety of his Christmas bonus to pay off the old loan, which was great in theory, but he forgot that vehicle registration and property tax would be due in January, and he didn't have a cent provisioned. He solved a long-term obligation using the resource that should be ammunition for the very short term. When the car repair came with a hefty price, he had no more resources. He had to resort to new, much more expensive credit to pay for the repair and still face the annual taxes, which together totaled $4,200. He traded one chain for another, heavier and shorter. Wait, before I tell you what happened to Kevin afterward, think, you in his place, with the pressure of a broken car and the momentary relief of the Christmas bonus, would you do differently? Honestly. It's in this moment of vulnerability that we commit the biggest foolishness. The consequence for Kevin was brutal.
He took out a quick personal loan with absurd interest rates. The financial cost of this new liability, added to penalties for delaying property tax, made him lose more than $1,200 just in unnecessary charges. He started the year not at zero balance, but with a structural debt balance that took months to reverse. Let's look at Patricia's case. She's a physical therapist, 49 years old, with a comfortable income of $13,400. High income, but zero capital circulation. She and her husband were going through a marital crisis, and Patricia decided the remedy for all conjugal problems was a very expensive trip to Asia in December, hoping to save the relationship. Patricia's mistake? She received a performance bonus of $9,600, and instead of provisioning property tax and her two kids' school costs, she spent it all on the trip. The mistake wasn't traveling, it was spending January's annual resource on December's emotion. She returned from vacation on January 1st with her bank account bone dry, the marital crisis more acute than before, and $5,100 in property tax due. Here comes the reflective pause. Patricia's problem isn't lack of money, it's lack of priority. She sacrificed next year's financial foundation for a desperate attempt at emotional relief. And this, man, is what makes the difference between those who prosper and those who spin their wheels: the ability to postpone pleasure in favor of tactical security. She had the money, had the resource, but burned the tactical reserve for momentary relief. The result? She had to installment the taxes and school on a credit card in a total of 6 installments, which added a financial cost of almost $700 in interest and fees, plus the stress of almost having a bad credit score at the beginning of the year. Notice the pattern connecting Kevin and Patricia. They ignored the most basic principle of flow management, which is predictability. Kevin, with lower income, was forced to sacrifice liquidity. Patricia, with high income, chose to sacrifice liquidity. In both scenarios, the result was the same: paying more interest, paying penalties, and starting the year under pressure. This happens because the human brain has a brutal difficulty valuing the future over immediate pleasure, and the financial system takes advantage of this software flaw that exists in your head. Do something for me. Tell me if you've already found yourself making decisions in the heat of emotion without thinking about long-term cost. Try to answer for yourself without lying. Which of the two mistakes I mentioned is yours? Is it Kevin's planning failure, trying to solve the past with the future's resource? Or is it Patricia's denial, using money from annual commitments to pay for a momentary luxury? If you can see yourself in them, you're not alone in this battle. Now comes the critical part. Why did these cases with such different incomes fall into the same trap? Because they ignored the principle of radical transparency. The country's credit system was designed to be convenient in the short term and destructive in the long term. Financial institutions earn much more from your mistake than from your discipline. When you don't provision, when you spend your Christmas bonus, the bank is there with overdraft protection, personal credit, and credit card revolving credit, ready to charge you 23% monthly interest. They don't want you to provision,
They want you to need their money. According to Ray Dalio, you need to face the total of your annual commitments all at once without makeup.
The truth, even if it hurts, is the only armor that works in the world of finance. If you don't know the real size of the threat, if you don't calculate the total annual cost, you have no way to defend yourself, and January's catastrophe is inevitable. Let's analyze this with a numerical example so you understand how the wrong mental attitude generates a catastrophic financial result. Think about Elias, the third character I introduced in planning. He's an engineer, makes $7,900, and is disciplined, but tries to be too smart. He had provisioned $3,200 for school supplies and his son's enrollment. He tried to be aggressive and put the resource in an investment that theoretically would yield a bit more, but had low liquidity. Elias's mistake wasn't greed, it was confusion of priorities. He left resources destined for very high priority expenses and immediate liquidity in an asset that would be available by protocol 31 days later. When a partnership opportunity arose and required a contribution of $9,500, he tried to withdraw the school supplies amount. Result? The money would be in the account in February when January's bills were overdue. The account closed at a loss. He had to pay enrollment of $450 and the first tuition of $820, totaling $1,270. Since he delayed the supplies, he lost the 17% discount on the total amount, which was $544, and still paid a 4% penalty, $128. The total cost of Elias's foolish smartness was the penalty and loss of discount, totaling $672 in unnecessary loss, besides the emotional cost of starting the year owing and calling the school to beg for deadline extension. All this because of a return he wouldn't have reached $37. You need to understand that the problem isn't having money, it's the foolish allocation of that money. Money for annual taxes and mandatory costs should be in a place with daily liquidity that allows immediate withdrawal. Return is secondary when the mission is maintaining healthy cash flow. This difference of $672 isn't just money, it's the emotional cost of starting the year with a feeling of suffocation. There's a specific protocol that can reverse this and ensure you never again make Kevin's, Patricia's, or Elias's mistake. I'll show you exactly how in the next video. You'll need an hour to map your flow and a simple spreadsheet, but if this method is applied correctly, you can create a 27% safety margin in your annual budget. So recapping the brutal diagnosis, you saw that January's catastrophe isn't an accident, but a structural projection error that confuses single cost with diluted annual cost. You understood through Kevin's and Patricia's cases that both low income with priority error and high income with emotional denial fall into the same negative cash flow trap. And you saw the absurd cost Elias paid for trying to be too smart, sacrificing liquidity in favor of insignificant return. Most people will watch this and think, good that I know this, and won't do anything. They'll let the next Christmas bonus be burned by consumption anxiety and lack of provision. They'll pay more interest, more penalties, and repeat the vicious cycle of January suffocation in 2027. I don't want you to be that person. There's a method that major wealth managers use to deal with mandatory costs and separates those who prosper from those always digging a hole. It involves what we call forced provisioning system and an intriguing concept, prioritizing capital defense before capital attack. What separates those with positive flow from those always in the red? A specific sequence, field mapping before logistics guarantee. Seems simple, but the counterintuitive detail is execution speed and the discipline of not touching this resource. In the next video, I'll break down this complete protocol. Look, it's important I be clear. What I'm passing to you here is not personalized investment advice, nor a magic action plan for your specific case. If your financial situation is very complex with multiple commitment sources or large assets involved, you should seek a consultant. Your success depends on factors only you know, your income level, your risk tolerance, and your life cycle. The provisioning principle is universal, yes, but execution and exact amounts vary radically from person to person. Now you have the diagnosis. You have all of 2026 ahead. Will you start this new year digging a hole, or will you use January's mistake as the solid foundation of your financial arsenal? The decision is yours, and time is short. If you identified with this brutal diagnosis, leave a like so I know, and tell me in the comments, which of these structural traps have you already fallen into? I want to know if you're alone in this. And if you have someone going through this, send them this video now. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video, where I'll deliver the complete protocol.